showed up. Okay, so I just want to start with, I'm going to go to the share my screen here, and I'm going to go to the whiteboard. And here's what I have on my whiteboard. And I know it's a funny little picture, but you can see there's little antennas sticking out of the baby's head. You can see the baby head is like really big and the body's small. And that's the way babies are. You know, they're born with this enormous, huge head with this brain in it that just sponges up everything.
Yeah, then their body has to make arrangements for that.
That's right. And really these represent their senses. So everything that goes into that baby goes into it through its senses. The five senses, and maybe more. You know, maybe there's even more that's implied there. But what happens is that little brain sponges up everything. And as time goes by, the little brain changes, and then these receptors get a little bit smaller. They're still there. But what happens is that everything that they need to know in the world to be a foundation for them has already been absorbed, and we know that probably by about age 3, when the plasticity starts to change in the baby's brain, is when they start to think more cognitively and they don't rely on their senses as much. However, one of the things that's not so good about that is if they develop difficult behaviors by that time, then, you know, these receptors go away and it's kind of locked in there, and it becomes a behavior, becomes a habit over time. So then we have these little kids running around with these behaviors that are habitual, and we're not quite sure what to do with them. So I think that's really important, because we see behaviors sometimes as really difficult when in fact they're very normal for the child because they've been doing them for a long time.
Yeah.
Unless they're an emergent behavior, which sometimes happens when children get into stressful situations or they have change in their lives that is dynamic enough to cause them to develop a behavior over it. So that being said, I'm just going to stop sharing this one. I'll see if I can find my other one. Oh, somebody's coming in. We'll see. Oh, good. Somebody. Who was it?
I'm not sure who that is yet.
Oh, yeah, maybe they're just,
their internet's probably slow.
Okay, can't see. Oh, they might be just auditory. She went away. Okay, I don't know who it was. It said Char, but I don't recognize who that was. Well, anyway, let me share this one. No, not that one. Where did it go? I'll get rid of this thing. All right, back to here. Somehow I lost it. I will not share the screen. No, I don't know where it went. Oh well, I will find it. That's not the way. So I believe that I accidentally closed it. If I go to the, I'll go to the course, and I'll find it. Okay. So I took the page from, wow, No, nothing wants to work for me because I'm having a hard time with this. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I have to stop sharing. Huh. Funny. Okay, I can't find it now. Huh. All right.
What was it that you're trying to find?
Oh, that if you go into the website, go into Canvas and you find the course. Down in week 11, there's a page down there that shows you what it is that you're going to be putting together for your final. So
I kind of looked at that tiny bit, but I don't.
Okay, so it's just really basic. It doesn't have a lot of information in it. It does say that there are 500 words at least. And, you know, as I have in the past, you can use a PowerPoint or you can use a Word or any appropriate format to put together your final. And really what it is going to be a recap of what you've done this term, with one exception, and that is that the most important part of the whole term is going to be that behavior plan. So you're going to develop a behavior plan with the parent based on what you're learning during this term. Okay, that's going to be like one of the last things that you do in the term. So I want folks to be sure to not forget to put that in their final, because sometimes what happens is when you get to the very end of the term, you're in such a hurry to finish because I know things get crazy and you have so many things to do, and all of a sudden things start happening so fast that you don't remember to put important things in. So it's really all about,
or if you have other classes, you're not turning that into. So I have 4 other classes besides this one, so.
Well, there you go. So be sure to, that is an important part of it. And although you don't have time to really give feedback on that behavior plan during the term, it's something that if you start putting it together earlier by talking to the parents about suggestions as the assignments come forward, then you'll be able to put that final behavior plan together pretty quickly. So coming up, you're going to be doing the ASQ, for instance, with a parent. And the ASQ gives an idea. Well, it's Carly.
Now she's coming up in.
It says that she's there. There, Carly. Carly, are you on video or are you just audio?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. It wasn't lighting up. I'll do video in a second. I'm just gonna get my son situated and then I'll put myself up.
Okay. So basically, the final project is going to be a recap of the entire term, of everything you did. And usually, Lexi, you're pretty good about putting that all together. But one of the things that I want you to do is, if there's any difficulties in an assignment that you're doing, to be sure and fix that before you include it in the final. So, for instance, if there was a piece of information that was missing that I wanted you to do, and you left it out of the assignment, like, for instance, an evaluation of something, like the ASQ. So after you do the ASQ, I want a reflection on how that went and kind of an assessment of where the behaviors are for the child based on the tool itself. So if you forget to do that, then I would want you to put that in the final. So it's not just, for instance, a copy and paste of everything that you've done into the final project, but more than that. It's kind of like reflecting on those assignments. And some, you've already done a lot of that yourself already.
Yeah.
In the assignments that you've been doing. It's difficult when you're working with parents that are having children with difficult behaviors for them to kind of deal with that. And it's really important for us to not come across as an expert, but to listen to what they have to say and take into consideration the ideas that they have and the reflections that they have on their lives with their child at home, because they really do know their children. And the only difference really is that maybe we've taken a few more classes and we have a little bit more insight on some of that stuff, but typically parents know their children, so we have to really listen. And we were all children once too, so we know we know how you can fall into difficult behaviors as a child and get in trouble all the time. Some of us anyway. Raising my hand. So it's really important for you to include the parents' opinions and the parents' feedback in that final project as well. So I'm looking for a reflection on everything that kind of happened during the term for you, with those specific things that you're doing as assignments as kind of the talking points. So each week you're doing a child study assignment, and each week you'll have some reflection back on that and something that you've learned from it. So you want to include that.
When we do the reflections, are we allowed to put like our own opinions in a reflection?
Yes, as long as you're respectful. In the observation class, I kind of slap your hands for that, because in the observation class it's a little bit different, because your opinion isn't necessarily the most important part. The most important part is what you saw and allowing the reader to develop their own opinion. But as the person that's developing with the parent a behavior plan, then your opinion is important, as long as it's respectful and not judgmental. So we all know that kids sometimes have behaviors that seem to be mean and spiteful, or they seem to have something going on that looks like something else, but that isn't necessarily the case. So you need to be careful about what your assumptions are. Maybe an accurate assumption might be if you have a child that's moving back and forth between households, so their parents are sharing custody, for instance, and they go back and forth, it might be accurate to say that some of the behaviors develop because they have different rules in different settings. And in one place it's okay, but in the other place it's not. So that would be a fair assumption. But it wouldn't be a fair assumption to say that one parent is a poor parent and the other is an okay parent. Does that make sense? Okay. Because you really don't know. I mean, you're just kind of, you get to peek in the window, but you don't get to walk in the door and there with them. So you can't really know for sure. So how are you guys doing so far? How do you feel it's going so far with your working with your target family?
I think I'm doing pretty good. It's just hard for me because the child I'm doing they don't live in Baker, so I'm doing it over phone call so.
Okay, and I understand that. And one of the things that you might have to do is like a Zoom meeting or something, so that you get a little bit better context.
Mine's going good too. I mean, I think it helps that I know him so well, the child, and like it's questions that like I've had for a while already, and so I feel like we can help. Like I can ask you questions, and I feel like that's really helpful. And I haven't really been able to see him, but I'm gonna see him soon.
Okay.
In the next couple So I think it just really helps that since I can't see him in person, I do know him like pretty well.
It does, but also, you know, one of the things to be cautious of is not jumping to conclusions based on previous knowledge. So you may know him pretty well, but children have a tendency to change pretty quickly. So watch out for assumptions that might not have a foundation.
Yeah, and like you said, the parents have a hard time like bringing it up. Like if I like ask a certain kind of question, my sister will be very quick to be defensive rather than answer the question.
Well, plus she's my sister.
And so I constantly tell her, you know, like we're not trying to like think of something to like fix, or we're not trying to like pick at one thing, because it's kind of usually like things that many people deal with. You know what I mean? Like I try to make it seem more broad for her.
Bring it back around to her though too. So for instance, when you're asking questions, try to get her to give you an opinion versus asking a question that you want to know the answer to. What do you think about this? You know, give her the opportunity to let you know what she's thinking. Maybe that will help not to be so defensive.
Like I asked her, how do you feel Scott is what I've been calling him. How do you feel Scott does in like self-regulating? Like, and she started with, oh, he does good, but by the end she kind of was like, no, he doesn't really.
Okay, that's okay. Let her talk it through, and then watch those terms too. That we have a tendency to use terms that people aren't necessarily using in everyday life. So put it into you can do it some way in like a story type way. So how do you think Scott does when you're asking? And I don't know. I don't remember if we're doing the marshmallow test. I can't remember if this term we have a marshmallow test or not. But if you remember the marshmallow test where the kids have the marshmallows and the guy tells them they can't eat them, they have to wait until he comes back. And then if they wait until he comes back, then he'll give them more marshmallows. But the kids are impulsive, so they can't. And they stuff them in their mouths or, you know, do whatever several kids do, try to wait, but other kids are more spontaneous. So if you ask the question in a way that helps her to understand what you mean by regulation, self-regulating, then maybe she can answer it in a way that will make sense for her. And you'll get what you need. So try to think about what it is when you're asking self-regulation, for instance. What does that look like? What is it that you're asking? I can't tell if Victor, you're muted. So let's see if we can get you to unmute. Are you there, Victor? Okay. Did that help with that question a little bit? To, you know, be careful about some of that stuff. And I'm not, you know, here's the deal. And I learned this a long time ago. You're going to make mistakes. That's okay. Just learn from it. You know, as you start working with parents, you know, you try to be respectful. You try to understand where they're coming from, but you'll make mistakes. And the best thing to be able to do is to say, oops, I didn't mean to offend you, or, you know, I didn't mean to say it that way. Let me ask that a different way. Okay. All right, so when you get all done, you should have a presentation that includes a synopsis or an overview of all of the different assignments that you've had, a reflection on the learning that you've had in the term, the learning that each of those assignments maybe helped you with. You can even say that, you know, some of them you didn't like, or they were difficult, or they seemed time consuming, or whatever it is that you want to say that that is related to the child study. So, you know, if it's something that wasn't meaningful to you as far as finding out information goes, why do you think that is? For instance, we just did the cultural questions, and sometimes people get balled up about culture and what that is. When we're talking about culture, we're not talking about culture with a big C. We're talking about culture with a little c. It's a personal, private culture for each family. And so when people start asking questions about culture, sometimes they don't get the answers that they maybe thought they would. Because parents will look at you like, what are you talking about, my culture? You know, so you have to figure out what are those questions that find out the answers about individual families. You know, what do you like to do as a family? You know, how do you pass your time? What is important to you as far as child rearing goes, kind of stuff. And then when you get to the end and you have this nice little package, you want to make sure that you have a resource list or a bibliography, for sure. And it doesn't have to be extensive, but there are a lot of resources that you can use. The text is a wonderful resource. I think they have a lot of great things. And also I've recommended to some folks throughout the course the conscious discipline videos. Have you seen those?
No.
Okay, so conscious discipline is kind of a methodology. It's a way of reframing behavior. It's more of a management and prevention type of thing as opposed to an intervention or a discipline. And there's little video clips on YouTube in conscious discipline. There's breathing techniques that you can teach children. And then those of us too who deal with difficult behaviors, we need to learn how to modify our breathing, modify the way that we respond to children. And so there's some great techniques about that too. So what happens when children make you angry, for instance, you know, with their behavior? They keep doing something that you've asked them a million times not to do, and you feel your temperature rising and your face is getting red and you're, got that angst in your stomach, and you try to deal with the behavior when you're feeling angry and upset, and that doesn't work. So there's those calm down kinds of things that she uses in the videos that are good for those of us who are adults as well. So they're also a great resource for parents. In fact, she has designed these little video snippets with parents in mind, and they're also great resources for EC staff. So be sure and actually I can post a few of those too. Did I put one in an announcement? Maybe not. But you can go and look those up. Just Google conscious discipline and click on the video links, and it'll bring these all up. There's a whole bunch of them. But they may be, when you start getting into developing your behavior plan, they may be very helpful in coming up with some ideas like breathing techniques for children who need to calm down quickly, like that self-regulation thing. Okay, any questions? Oh, be sure to, when you go into week 11 and you look, there's a little audio that I also pre-recorded that's kind of recapping what we're talking about now a little bit. And there's always a rubrics for the final, and the rubric tells you what it is that I grade on. And of course there's some subjectivity, but I stick pretty much to trying to use the grading rubric there for grading for your finals, what's included and what's not included. Any questions now?
Not yet.
Not yet. I'm about done talking. So, there are some assignments coming up. One of the ones that's coming up that's going to be a really important one is routines. And you may have children who have two different families that they're involved with. So they have their parents maybe have individual living situations, and they go from one to another. And so there's two different routines that they have. So if you can, try to get both routines from the parents. And when you're talking about routines, try to get them to nail it down to the times and what happens during those times. You know, like, so meal times are typically around 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe. That's breakfast. And for breakfast, you know, what do they do? They fix the breakfast together, or mom fixes breakfast and the child comes in and eats. And then what behaviors might show up during that time? You know, does he eat well, or she, or do they want to go play and not eat? You know, what happens during that time? So there's, you know, several different pieces to this. And you want to look at when behaviors happen. It's very important that you look and find out from the parents when behaviors happen. A lot of behaviors happen around bedtime, for instance, or when they come home from school. If they're in school, childcare or preschool or even grade school, and they come home and they're really tired, sometimes you'll have behaviors that show up that aren't wanted during that particular time. So watch for those. When you do the ASQ, I have to apologize that I can't give you the ASQ in a format that's easily uploaded. You're going to have to scan it. Scan it into the assignment, because it's a PDF file and you can't write into it. So you'll have to print it off and write into it and then scan it back up. And I wish I could fix that, but I can't so far. I haven't been able to. I've tried to convert it to a Word document, and it just comes out all jumbled. It loses its integrity when I do that. So try to be able to scan that. If you take a photograph of it, I probably won't be able to see it. I cannot make my screen, even on my desktop, big enough to be able to see some of the detail when folks take photographs of things. So, so that's just a difficulty with it. I'm sorry. Be sure to score it, the ASQ. There's a scoring page. And whenever you do a file of some sort, an observation or an assessment of some sort, you want to make sure that you fill out all of the information on the main page. But you can use fake names. That's fine. You need to know, you know, how old the child is in months, years that quantify to months, and the parents' names, and you know, you can give fake information, but just want you to practice filling out those forms, because those typically will go in the child's file and they need to be complete. Okie dokie. So have I talked enough, and did you get enough information, or is there still more that you need to know?
How do you want us to score the ASQ? I'm not sure.
The ASQ, it's self-evident. So when you start doing the ASQ, it gives you a number for whatever the answer, the response is. So
okay, like on the paper it does?
Right, yes. On the form itself
Okay.
it does. And then you add it all up at the end, and then there's basically a score that tells you whether the child is at risk for having social emotional issues or not. So you want to look at that score and see if it is. something that you would pay attention to if this child was in your classroom and you did an ASQ with the parent and you came up with a score that was high enough to show that they have difficulties in social emotional development, what would you do with that? So that's kind of there's kind of a baseline. It shows where you go over the baseline. You'll be able to see that when you put the score in. So basically the rest of the assignments that you're going to be doing are kind of just really talking about behaviors and the things that happen before behaviors happen and what happens after behaviors happen, the kinds of things that children, the goals of behavior, what children want to know or want to get from behaviors. It's my experience, and you can, this one is kind of has been said in different ways, but there's only 3 different reasons why we have behavior. One of them is for children to get something or avoid something, or the other one is to change the level of activity. So in either agitate an activity or to try and calm it down or recede from it. So those are the things that you're going to need to take into consideration when you're thinking about behavior plan. There's an example of a behavior plan that I've done. It's a very simple one, and your behavior plans are going to be fairly simple. You know, they don't need to be super complicated. But an important thing about behavior plans is, you know, what is your role in them? What is the parent's role in them? And what is the child's role? And an important thing that you might consider when you start putting together the behavior plan is, will the child be included? Can they be included in that behavior plan? Can they also help to determine what that plan looks like? I'm going to give you an example. There was a little girl who, she was actually in a wheelchair. She had a tumor on her spine that was inoperable. And so she was relegated to a wheelchair, and she was just really having a hard time in the classroom. She's very bright. She did not want to participate. It was difficult for her because of her chair. We gave her all kinds of things to help her, but she still was very resistant to you know, her own growth. And the teacher decided to include her in the IFSP meeting, which was brilliant. Because when she went to the IFSP meeting and she heard these adults talking about her goals and the things that she could do well and the things that she needed to learn and everything, she became interested in her own development. And she actually had ideas and contributed to the IFSP. And from that point on, she actually began to increase her own physical ability. And at one point, although she was supposedly not able to, she had to be changed because she was incontinent. She couldn't go to the restroom by herself. And she was on the changing table, and the teacher was changing her, and she said, "Teacher, look what I can do." And she's just kind of had this funny little look on her face, and she says, "What? What?" And she lifted her foot, which was totally not supposed to happen. So because she was involved in her own development and she actually began to focus on it, I think that's why she began to develop some of that skill level back. So involving children in their own development is an important thing, I think. Okie dokie. Any more questions, complaints?
No, I was just looking back on my old ones, making sure that I'm fixing up as the weeks go by, so that when I go back to compile them, I already have them kind of like.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So if you miss something or there was a question about an assignment, then if you go back and fix it, then you'll be able to have it ready to go. And all you have to do is I add it all together and polish it off.
Yeah, if I have mine saved like Word document, and then I have folders, and I have them labeled, and yeah, so it's easy to like just grab them and move them over or take stuff from them.
Okay, well, I think that's about all, unless you can think of anything. And of course, you can always ask me if there's something that that comes to you later. Just send me an email or something, or join me in my tent. And maybe I can figure out how to get a bear out there in the picture.
Or a deer or something.
Or a deer or something. Yeah, I don't know. I looked at the ones that were on the ski slope, and I thought, no, I didn't want a picture of snow. This would be better.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you,
Thank
girls,
you.
for showing up. And hopefully this is helpful and not just wasting your time. And I always look forward to see what you have to put together for your final.
Are you gonna put this recording in the?
Yeah, I'll try to do that. I haven't had much luck lately with Zoom recordings, but I might have to re-record it. But I'll put it somewhere.
Or even if you could have put in announcements, that would be okay too.
Yeah, you know what? Announcements won't take a Zoom meeting for some reason.
Oh,
So I have to either re-record it as an MP4 or do something, but I'll figure it out.
So, just out of curiosity, if my printer, if I don't have time to go get more ink for my printer, is there another, can I like try to transcribe this ASQ into a Word document?
I'd rather you not, because I want to see how you use the form. But
Okay.
you can you can go to the colleges. Any of the colleges, and
Yeah, and then they probably have like a scanner.
they have scanners. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So any of the campuses that can help you with that. And they'll, if you take a thumb drive with you, often they can actually fix it so that they can give it to you in a thumb drive. And then that way you don't have to have them send it to you. You can do it yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I'll go do that now so that I have time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty, you guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the evening and have a great day tomorrow.
You
And the
too.
weekend. Hopefully it'll be nice. No rain.
yeah.
No more snow.
Yeah, it started snowing earlier today. I'm like,
You're
what's
kidding.
going on here?
Really? Where are you?
Yeah, in Baker City.
Oh, you're in Baker. Well, yeah. You
Yeah.
can never know.
It's just raining all day.
Well,
Yeah,
it rained today and snowed today, so.
I'm in the banana belt, so I don't have to worry about it too much. So, as you can see out my tent door, it's very lovely. Okay, well, I'm going to say goodnight now.
Good night.
Good night.
Alright, see ya.